Hello. Welcome to Season 8 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Make the Wives Pick. Since our wives have to watch these movies with us every week, and often complain about it, we made them pick the movies this season. If you want to see the list of upcoming films and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for listening. You know, now that we're kind of getting towards the end of the year, into the holiday season, it just kind of made me stop and reflect about what's truly horrific in life. And because, you know, we spend a lot of time watching these movies and thinking about like horror movies and the way that directors and actors and producers make you feel things that are negative, like with these movies. But I think the real life horror is family, because my mother-in-law gave my wife COVID at Thanksgiving. And now I am just wildly excited that we're recording today because I get to talk to another person. We've been locked in the house, isolating for over a week now. Yep. And thankfully, I somehow didn't catch it. But that means I'm now living in the guest room while my wife continues to get over it. So life's just real fun. And I love it. And everything's great. And I'm going to be super positive about things today.
Yeah, I get it. We just came off the 14 day for, I had to be quarantined for work because of exposure. And last night, my brother, sister-in-law, and sisters stopped by and we hung out outside because it's not officially 14 days yet. Tomorrow's 14 days, technically.
So are you saying that like you found out that you had been in close contact with someone that had it, and then afterwards you behaved responsibly and didn't put your family members at risk?
100%. Yes. We missed Thanksgiving because of this.
Yeah, weird. What a foreign concept.
I know. That was even with the, negative test.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was, but getting to see them I thought was pretty good. We hadn't got to see them for a while. We were doing like a weekly movie night. It's like I had seen these people for, a few months, at least once a week, and so I was like, I get to see some fam.
Yeah. In a responsible way that didn't put their health
all outside. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Might take some notes on that and send it to someone.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are still in season 8 where the theme is Make the Wives Pick, and Sarah picked a ghost story because she knew that you'd hate it with every fiber of your being, and she was mostly right. But like, I feel like that was like super targeted at you.
Yeah,
like,
that was a personal attack.
She was using her influence over this season specifically to trigger you.
Yeah.
And it basically went exactly as expected.
100%.
And she also picked The Devil's Rejects because she knows that you really like that movie and wanted us to watch it because she picked it, not because you got to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd say that this one also was an attempted troll, but it backfired completely because she hated this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, Katie hated it as well. She was, I thought it was funny because like halfway through, she's like, this is, like she very rarely says it, but she's like, this is an incredibly terrible movie. As like, I'm just like entranced in it and haven't wrote much notes.
Yeah, because we had definitely seen parts of it multiple times on the back patio at Jackalope, but it typically has never like had the sound, so you don't pick up like the dialogue and stuff of what's going on. You're just kind of watching this out of context scene and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
So the last time I saw this would have been with you at my house in Oklahoma, so more than 5 years ago, so I didn't remember all of it super well. But it was interesting to go back and, like we've talked about several times, revisit this one from the more, let's take notes and think about everything that was being done from the director's perspective and how effective was it and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I mean, I honestly didn't put a ton of effort in this movie because I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
like I kind of knew where we were going with it, but yeah, I was, I saw it on the list. I was obviously excited to do it, understanding about specific things about this movie. Like I feel like I could just tell you the movie plot itself without even watching it. So like, It's just like, okay, I think I come prepared for this one, like the most prepared I've been, but not on purpose.
Well, you've been preparing for this one for years and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, since 2005, basically, when the movie came out.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'll introduce it and then you can do your fun facts. And then I have, I kind of want to start the discussion on this one a little bit different than normal, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
In 2005, Lionsgate brought us The Devil's Rejects. This film was written and directed by Rob Zombie and tells the story of three killer friends running from the law in classic 70s slasher style. This movie proves that sometimes you never know who you can trust, and it's most definitely not for anyone with a weak stomach. The Devil's Rejects was made on a budget of $7 million and brought in around $21 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Perfect.
What did you learn about this movie?
Oh, yeah. My bad. I was sitting there thinking about the new way we're starting it, and I just forgot all about it. So, this movie is technically a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses. Technically. As it involves kind of the same characters and stuff. Two total different concepts, basically. But even Sherry Moon Zombie, she talked about how she didn't even see this movie as a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, rather just a movie that happened to the same characters.
Interesting. Yeah,
it does kind of tie in with the sheriff, but it's a completely different style of film. If you guys haven't seen House of a Thousand Corpses, pretty gnarly.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely didn't need to see that one to watch this one and totally get what was going on.
Yeah. So, initially, too, I think her name was Mrs. Firefly, the mom, basically. She was initially played by an actress named Karen Black, and Karen Black wanted a raise to come back to The Devil's Rejects, and they didn't have it in the budget, which is why Leslie Easterbrook was casted as the mom, who I thought did a pretty good job being creepy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, in case you didn't notice, Rufus Firefly, at the beginning of the movie, is the guy all decked out in metal while they're having a shootout with the cops. He played Michael Myers in the Halloween remake.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't put that together.
Yeah, I thought he looked really familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. So, a lot of the characters in this are actually named, I say a lot, I think 3 characters are named after characters in Groucho Marx. It's in the movie where Captain Spaulding was used as one, but Otis B was used in Rufus Firefly. Those are also characters that Groucho had in a few different movies, which I thought was pretty funny. Groucho Marx movies or the Marx Brothers movies. So the Firefly house that was like the ranch in the movie is actually in Santa Clara, California, and it was used for shooting a couple movies. Robin Hood Men in Tights, there's a scene there. The Haunted Mansion, Hatchet, Hotel Hell, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and ironically enough, the TV series called Firefly.
Oh.
They were all recorded there. And in fact, Rob Zombie came back and even recorded part of Lords of Salem there. So, Sherry Moon Zombie, her brother actually played a small part in this movie. He was a police officer. He actually showed up on set just to, hang out, and they threw him in as a police officer. So there's a little fun tidbit. The last thing, Otis's famous line that he says in this movie, "I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work," was a direct reference to the Manson family member Charles Watson, the quote that he basically said on the murder of Shannon Tate. The line is also referenced in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, for the record.
Yeah.
Which is...
I actually picked up on that.
Those are my facts on the movie.
Nice. Yeah, this I was kind of surprised that this movie seems to be like fairly well regarded in a lot of circles, because it is so like off-putting on a lot of levels. And I don't mean that in like a bad way, but like it's meant to be difficult. And one thing I was kind of thinking about with this is, you know how like a lot of people that listen to like really, really like heavy music, it's almost like a tough guy thing. Like, oh yeah, I can listen to this and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
When all you hear is noise and it just is a turn off to you.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a toughness to that. I kind of feel the same way about this movie. And some of the other horror movies that we watch that are real intense, and like gory, is that it's almost like I can watch this and not be traumatized by it. Like I can keep control over my emotions enough to watch this and enjoy it, as opposed to the average person that would watch this and not be able to handle it. So I didn't have like a fully formed idea about this, but just one thing I wanted to bring up is I thought it was kind of interesting that Rob Zombie kind of makes music that's in that same vein.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that like his movie style, I feel like captures something about like that same vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I remember being in school when this movie came out, and you know, some of the kids in the bands that we would play around with, that were in harder music. In fact, one of them's like in a really popular band now that's kind of in that genre. Like all like talking about how they wanted to see this movie, you know, try to figure out how, because we were still in high school at the time and all that. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense where it's a little bit, the same concept of, cause like I could never really get into super heavy stuff personally. Mm-hmm. But now when it comes to movies, it's like, this is right up my alley.
Yeah. But yeah, so, anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way because I didn't really have anywhere to go with it or anything. But the new way I wanted to start this was, I know that this is a movie that has been really high on your list for a long time. I mean, This is one that you are on record of being a big fan of. And like you said, you've been watching it pretty regularly since it came out. And so I just wanted to give you like an open forum to talk for a couple minutes about like, what are the things about this movie that pull you back to it and make it stand out to you from other movies? Because we watch a lot of horror movies, but this one for you has like stayed at the top for years and years. So
yeah,
this is your chance to just
my time to shine.
Write a little love letter to Rob Zombie. Let him know why you appreciate his work here. Yeah.
So basically, with this movie, this is the way I kind of see it. Now, is it a horror movie? Not necessarily. I would consider it more horror than Under the Skin or a ghost story. Yeah. You know, is it what my idea of horror is? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's more so kind of like a raunchy like 70s action movie in a way. But what I really think about it is I feel like, so I'm going to go on a big circle here. Quentin Tarantino has great movies. One of the reasons why is because, you know, you live in that, like a fairy tale world. So like with Inglourious Bastards, they, you know, kill Hitler, right? Well, that's not how it obviously went down, but it's like if he could write history, this is, you know, what it would be. The thing that Quentin Tarantino has that allows this kind of stuff to happen, or even like, you know, like with Kill Bill, he has ridiculously good dialogue. So like he writes out like line by line, very meticulous about it. The Devil's Rejects, I feel like has the same type of story this was done in 2005, remember? But same type of story, but it misses the mark on the dialogue. Like the dialogue is a little rough, and at times it's like, well, if you don't know what to say, just throw in shit and throw in fuck, and it's gonna work.
Right.
You know, so the dialogue's obviously pretty bad. But we were talking about with like Lords of Salem, how it was like a psychedelic horror movie. So Rob Zombie has this thing where it's almost like vintage. You know, this was based in the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like a 70s style movie that's just gone way too far and beyond what it's supposed to be to show like the horrors of this family attacking them and all that. So I just feel like if Quentin Tarantino can get away with making the movies like that, then someone else probably should be able to, even if they don't have the greatest dialogue. And by the greatest dialogue, I mean this has some of the worst lines in the world, which I wrote down, but it also has some like really terrifying lines that, you know, I have wrote down. I mean, the "I am the devil" quote, if it was said by a more menacing character, I think it might it have been a little bit terrifying, like just considering when that was said in the movie. But
yeah.
Anyway, I'll step away from that for a second to say this, where albeit the dialogue is a little rough, I like that there's the story within the story, so you kind of need to know, all you really need to know in the first movie is that the sheriff's brother was killed. Mm-hmm. And the sheriff's brother, the dead sheriff's brother, is now like on this personal maniac, like guns a-blazing, I'm going to find these people, I'm going to kill them, I'm not taking them to jail kind of thing, like they're dead. Within that, you have this whole world of this underworld of characters that are just like the most disgusting people that you know. So you have, you know, the pimp and whatever little weird western town he lives in. You have the guy who's selling the chickens, that's just super disgusting. I mean, it's just all from point A to point B, and the family there's no denying from the very beginning that they're guilty of what they're doing, right? There's they have no embarrassment for it. There's no grief. I mean, there's nothing. This is what we did. But somehow throughout the movie, like towards, you know, the 3/4 mark, it turns into like the hunters becoming hunted. Yes. Where Sherry Moon Zombie's running out. And so you start to get a little bit of like a horror scene in that, where she's getting chased by a guy, and you're starting to feel kind of like bad for her because she's the victim, and she's, in a way, you start to feel bad because she's and then it hits you where you're just like, oh no, like she's one of the worst people in the world, like,
right.
But you're almost like rooting for them, and then by the end of the movie with the shootout, you think, you know, guns a-blazing, they're going out on their shield, so to speak. But they're doing it for, like, it's all for the wrong reasons. Like, you're almost kind of rooting for them in a way, but it's because they're going out, you know, guns a-blazing, but also at the same breath, like, they just murdered and kidnapped a bunch of people and obviously needed to be not on this earth anymore. So it's just like, it kind of blows your mind. And then on top of that, the soundtrack's ridiculously good.
Yeah. It reminded me, what was the Western, was it Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where it just ends with them like
running
out of the stores, and then you know that they're just going to get shot up and everything. But I feel like it had kind of similar vibes to that. But I agree with you. And one of the things I had in my notes a lot was just talking about the way that the movie makes you feel about characters, because exactly to your point, it really villainizes like the sheriff. It really makes him look like cruel and unhinged, and just because of that, you kind of start to pull for these people who you previously have seen be really cruel and unhinged. Right. It's like just this weird kind of mind thing with how it went. But
yeah, because you get torn, because you're like, ah, dang, like that sucks that they're being tortured. You know, they're in this basement, the fire's lit. Oh, but they're also like terrible people who have killed multiple people.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like, so you definitely have the feeling like in the hotel scene early, like you really want the people who are not them to kill them.
Yeah.
you know, you want them to succeed and you want them to like turn the tables. But then, you know, less than an hour later, you're wanting them to survive from the cop. So it's like, I thought the movie was very effective in the way that it kind of manipulated the way that you felt about characters, and then would give you a glimpse just long enough to make you like second guess yourself, like, oh no, they are terrible. So,
and I think that's strictly it. Like, I definitely get, you know, dialogue's extremely rough and all that, but it's just like, you know, if he can kind of flip it around, even if it wasn't done on purpose, like, even if, you know, he could flip it around, they're pretty good, you know?
Yeah. I think the thing that stood out to me the most coming back to this one and looking at it like for doing an episode on it was just the directing and editing and the style. Like, this is more 70s than any other 70s horror movie we've watched.
Yeah.
And I mean, down to the most minute details, like the scene changes and the camera angles and the look of the film. And I felt like to some extent, even like the sound, with the, not like the soundtrack, but like the actual, like, sound mixing, sound effects, all that stuff of the movie, the mix, it was all like, it felt authentic. And he did a lot of like creative things in the style of that, like almost inside those constraints. And so just from like a movie making perspective, I was really impressed going back to this, and I kept catching more and more of that. And it's one of those things like where once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so then I was paying attention to that a lot, and it almost made it like less scary just because I was watching like the way that the movie was made. And that didn't happen very often. So outside of dialogue, did you have much?
No, much complaint? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So the filming style itself sometimes, what I felt like was super shaky enough where like it almost made you like I couldn't necessarily focus because I was more focused on like the up close face shots that were just like, it felt like the camera was literally just going left and right, you know, on purpose, you know. Those were the kind of things that kind of got me, because I was just like, man, like doesn't have to happen. Like, I get you're running with them and you're filming, or like the shootout at the beginning was super shaky and stuff. It's like, I just want to see them like have like a good old fashioned shootout where it's just, you know, guns ablazing, and, but that was, I mean, I think that was more so just my two main complaints was, I felt like the direction, the way they recorded was a little shaky sometimes, and dialogue could be a little rough, but it's also supposed to be like a 70s movie, where, you know, I mean, I just watched the Omega Man, and you talk about bad dialogue, like that's, so.
Yeah, I don't know. There were a few things that I didn't like about it as much, like from the plot perspective. Like, it was really weird to me that Danny Trejo and his friend just like disappeared. Yeah. It's like it seemed like they were super important to the movie for like 5 minutes, and then they were just gone. Yeah. And then there was also I didn't love the ending where you just had like the other guy show up out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, Tiny.
Yeah. I mean, it just felt like this person who was completely like tangent to the movie the whole time, like completely not a part of it. It was just like, oh, well, we've written ourselves into this situation. Now we just need to bring in an extra character to try and fix it, because there's no other way that they could get out of the scenario that we've contrived. Yeah. And then the way he just like walked into the building, like that character was super interesting to me, but was there no development of it? Or I feel like it could have been worked into more of the story so that it felt less out of left field when it happened.
Yeah. And, you know, I think a lot of the stuff I was reading with a movie like this, you know, they obviously have to cut out quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would be more than willing to bet there's probably something in there about that. But yeah, I thought, I mean, obviously the same thing. You see Tiny at the beginning, but you don't, you know, see him until the very end. And then I figured with the ending, they thought, well, maybe he knows what they're going to run into. You know, they're all cut up and stuff, and I don't know. I agree though. It was kind of strange. I kind of wish they did put like at least another scene where he was still doing some crazy stuff out there, just temporarily. 30 exactly. seconds, or something.
Yeah. I also had totally forgotten that Brian Posehn was in this. And we got to see him live, shortly after we moved down here at a smaller comedy club, and it was great. We accidentally got like a stage side table. And so I did not realize he's like a giant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like over 6 foot tall.
That's funny.
But still really funny, but he looked very young by comparison in this movie.
So they also put in, like, there's a couple characters in here that are from other movies, but one obviously. Imagine that, an actor from another movie in this movie. God dang. But one specifically is, so the mom who has her car stolen from Captain Spaulding. Yeah. She played Norma in Carrie, and she played Linda in the original Halloween.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna kind of say this, but one of the characters, which I think it was the blonde who was part of the band, I think she was in Three's Company. As like one of the people that came on for Susan Summers when she left the show. I'm pretty sure it was her.
Interesting.
That was. So, I mean, there's just like some random like people that thrown into this that I think I kind of appreciate that, but also like the names of the characters that are based off of Marx Brother movies and stuff. It's just
lots of references.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the only other thing you had mentioned that I kind of wanted to circle back to was about whether or not this is a horror movie. And I have mixed feelings on that, because like the scene in the hotel room was a straight up good distilled horror scene. I mean, to me, that felt very much like The Strangers or something kind of in that vibe, where it's like, I can't convince myself that this couldn't happen. And thinking of myself being stuck in a hotel room with these crazy people and what would I do in that situation and stuff, like, I can't reason my way out of, well, that could never happen because ghosts aren't real. Like there are crazy people out there. There are killers out there. There are sadistic and sick people out there. So that to me felt very horrific. And I will say, the way a lot of people talk about watching The Office just makes them uncomfortable. Like, a lot of people say I can't watch The Office because in those first couple seasons, Steve Carell just makes me too uncomfortable. I almost had to bail on the hotel scene for the same reason. Like, it's just awful. Like the way that they're treating the people there.
Yeah.
It's really, it grabs your attention and it makes you feel very uncomfortable and like you're in danger and you are worried about the people on the screen. Like, to me, it delivers on a horror level for sure.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, also the scene where Sherry is trying to escape and the cop is kind of like hunting her through the ranch. That also had very much that same type of feeling. So
yeah,
I think, and another thing too is that this is one that is a very dark movie, but there's also a lot of humor in it. And so that's kind of a weird thing. It is like the relationship between horror and humor. And I know that we've talked about that before, but like with Ready or Not, like we talked about how I felt like that was an effective use of like dark comedy while not making the movie feel like it was lightweight. Like it
right.
didn't. It still delivered some like legit horror scenes, even though there were some legit funny scenes. And I think that this one kind of fell into that too.
Yeah, I think one of the prime lines that were example of the dark comedy was Captain Spaulding taking the car from the mom and son, and the son's still in the car. Like, super brutal scene, and like you almost like feel a little bad for like kind of laughing at it, but it's just like that kid's traumatized in real life. But it's just like, I think it goes to show like just how messed up the family was. What's the matter, kid? Don't you like calves or clowns? Aren't we fucking funny? So it's just I was like cracking up at that just because how he says it, and then he follows it up with the like, I'll come back and kill you and your family, and you're just like, oh my god, you can't do that. Yeah. It did have a few lines in there. I also wondered, if Rob Zombie's tie into the music world is what made it where he was allowed to use the music that he used. I mean, like, we had like the Allman Brothers, Three Dog Night. We had Leonard Skinner was in here, Elvin Bishop. I mean, there's just Steely Dan, James Gang, a ton of there's Joe Walsh. I just wonder I wonder if they have some sort of tie into it, or I don't know, because like the soundtrack went hard.
Yeah, that could have been half the budget of the movie if you didn't have some connections.
Right. Yeah. Went hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, the first line I put, like, here's the movie that is going to make me a hypocrite for, being a fan of a not necessarily in the sense of horror movies as, if you want to go down, like, the Halloween or Friday the 13th route or whatever, it's going to make me the hypocrite, but, I don't know if it's just because of watching it back when it came out and enjoying it or what, but I don't know. I just definitely enjoy it. I definitely, like I said, I also enjoyed going out guns a-blazing. It's a Western thing, I think, so I definitely enjoy that too. But when it gets to the ending and they're in the car in the road and it's playing Leonard Skinner Freebird,
yes,
you're just like, you could kind of see where you feel like Rob Zombie was going with was like, might be like an extremely dramatic attempt of just saying like live your life, do what you want.
Yeah.
Obviously don't kill people. But when they're in the car and Freebird's playing and they're all like messed up and they just hand each other guns and drive straight at the cops to have the shootout, you're just like oddly like a little satisfied because you're like, okay, well they didn't make it. But they also went out their way.
They didn't get caught.
And also, I wouldn't want to get caught, especially after what just happened, at the ranch. So, what can you do? But, yeah, I mean, this movie had some super brutal deaths.
Yeah.
Some things you definitely wouldn't want to see in real life. And, a killer soundtrack.
Indeed. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.